Well, the State Capture Commission continued this morning, sitting earlier today and wrapping a little earlier. It started at 8 o'clock this morning and it's wrapped now for the day. We have been focusing a lot on what's happened in the aviation industry, and I'm joined now by Erin Bates, of course, is our point person keeping an eye on everything that's going on at the State Capture Commission. And what a beast it is to understand and to keep track of all these convoluted stories. Interestingly, we were just chatting with eNCA about the appearance of the former president with his son this morning to lend support to him in his culpable homicide case. And you have got some word from the Commission about if and when the former president will be appearing. Have you been able to establish the facts at this stage?
So, Sally, we've just received that statement from the spokesperson for the State Capture Inquiry. There was media speculation and reports on these dates in the middle of July when, per communications to the former president and his counsel, he is set down to give his version of evidence. That statement, in which I've just had a cursory look at, details several witnesses who've named former President Jacob Zuma in his evidence. We know that he has said time and again he's not implicated. People are trying to throw mud at him, hoping it will stick, but he doesn't have something to answer for. Well, the inquiry has sent him communications and it's set down those dates. The second week of July is when they want him to begin. This is now official word from the State Capture Inquiry spokesperson following those media reports. Times Live, for example, tipping those dates earlier on, but it's now on the record that they have written to the former president and they hoped that he would appear and testify on those dates. There is further information on the second page of the statement I haven't been able to look at running into studio, but I will be sure to follow up later on in the show.
And then I would imagine that his lawyers will then have to respond and say, yes, we can, or no, we can't, or is that absolutely set in stone, second week of July?
Well, if he's subpoenaed, for example, he must come before the inquiry. That's not the tone of the first page of the statement. His lawyers have been present since the beginning of the proceedings at the inquiry. And of course, we must remember that it was his signature in his final days as head of state, as president of the Republic of South Africa, at his behest, perhaps begrudgingly, considering his litigation against the public protector, that he signed into law and into effect the hearings at the State Capture Inquiry. So he will have his day to answer to the several claims against him when he appears at the Commission.
Does that indicate as well that he'll be allowed to cross-examine? Because that's one of the rules of the Commission, isn't it?
Certainly. There is this quid pro quo aspect of the State Capture Inquiry that if you want to cross-examine someone, that you should testify yourself. But then, of course, there is simply a case that the former head of state needs to answer for in relation to the evidence, for example, of Themba Maseko of GCIS, a former Public Enterprises Minister, or current Public Enterprises Minister, Praveen Gordhan, former Finance Minister, you know, the whole deal. But certainly those are among the several witnesses who have named the former president, and there are questions, and I'm sure there's a version that he has that he would be keen to table before Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo.
Now, you know, we wait for those big high-profile moments at the State Capture Commission, but the everyday, ordinary corruption allegations coming out are in themselves startling. And if we look back at what we've been hearing in the last week or so about the aviation industry, even yesterday and today, there really has been quite a lot that is very, very concerning. Could you give us a quick summary and make it simple, because I really find it hard to follow?
I'll do my best. I'll try and make it simple for myself too, I must confess. Certainly in the last 2 days we've heard mention of the ANC, and this specifically in relation to a Northwest contract. And that contract was with SA Express. So SA Express is this regional airline which is owned by the state. They were looking to extend routes to 2 government-owned airports in the Northwest. The claim is that those contracts, or the contract to do the ground services, which is all of the work that airport staff do before you actually get on the jet, that was outsourced to a third party, so neither SA Express nor the provincial government of the Northwest, and that's where all the funny business starts to come in. And just to contextualize that and try and make it simple for all of us, here's a critical moment of evidence from yesterday.
Apart from the chairperson and the CEO of SA Express,
yes,
the other individuals that were implicated was the then Minister of the DPE, Lynn Brown, and the then Minister of Department of Transport, Minister Dipuo Peters, the Premier of the Northwest, Mr. Supra Mahumapelu, the HOD of the Northwest, which I assume that was Mr. Bailey Mahlakuleng, and the CFO, of which I don't know the name, it was not mentioned as to who the person was, the MEC from the Northwest, and Mr. Volmar Rans, whom she alleged that was more like a right-hand man of the Premier.
And has there been a response from the former Northwest Premier?
There has. In fact, I received a statement exactly a week ago from the spokesperson for a foundation for which he is the chair. This is Supra Mahumapelo. And at the time, it didn't really make much sense to me. There was mention of evidence to come at the state capture inquiry by Mr. Ngwenya, who we've just seen in that clip. And it was quite puzzling. But now it all makes sense. And in this foundation statement, we hear that Mahumapelo is going to pursue legal avenues to respond to the allegations from Ngwenya. They insist the allegations against Mahumapelo are untrue and that he is going to consult with lawyers about having his chance to give his version of the story at the state capture inquiry.
Thank you very much, Erin. Confirmation, though, and the big news of the hour is that the former President Jacob Zuma has been called to speak at the Commission, likely the second week in July.
Correct.
Thank you very much.